sometimes, life will force you to grow up faster than expected. This is the story about how a 15-year-old girl became a mighty woman. Malala Yousafzai was born on July 12, 1997, into a Sunni Muslim family. She is the eldest daughter of Ziauddin Yousafzai and his wife, Turpekai, along with two younger brothers. Malala means grieved in the Urdu language and is inspired by the name of a 19th century Afghan heroine named Malala of Maiwand, whose significance to the Pakistani people is as great as that of Joan of Arc to the Irish. Malala spent the early years of her life in Mingora, a town in the Swat district of Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, which borders Afghanistan to the northwest. From a very early age, Malala showed signs of possessing great intelligence, a quality that was undoubtedly developed thanks to her healthy family environment. Her father, Ziauddin, who was one of her greatest role models and educators, was a poet and the owner of the Kushal Public School, a network of schools. He always described Malala as a very special girl. To illustrate this point, Malala spoke 3 languages at the age of 10: Urdu, Pashto, and English, and she wanted to be a doctor. It was at this point, however, that her father, an observant man, noticed that his daughter Malala had a deep passion for defending the rights of others and encouraged her to become an activist. He would sometimes allow her to stay up at night talking about politics after her 2 younger brothers had been sent to bed. In 2007, young Malala, only 10 years old, had a promising future ahead of her, but things began to go wrong in the area. That same year, many elements of the fundamentalist Islamic Taliban army took control of the region where Malala lived. With Sharia law in hand, the Taliban imposed new rules that banned basic cultural activities, such as dancing, music, and television. Among the new rules imposed by the Taliban's reign of terror was one that directly affected little Malala: the ban on girls attending school. The Taliban regime, as extreme in small matters as in large, went so far as to destroy hundreds of schools across the country to enforce its will. During this time, civilians lived under the threat of death, and decapitated bodies appeared almost daily in public places. Despite the terrible situation in her country, Malala refused to be intimidated, and in 2008, at the age of 11, she began to fight against the atrocities and excesses of terrorism, not with guns, bombs, or violence, but with the courage of her words. At a very young age, our protagonist began to give speeches in social forums, openly defending the right of girls to education and participating in various aid programs for young Pakistani students. In September 2008, Malala's fame began to grow after her father took her to the city of Peshawar, the provincial capital, to speak at a local press club. It was there, in front of the cameras, that an 11-year-old girl uttered a phrase that would immortalize her legacy. "How dare the Taliban take away my basic right to education?" Those words meant becoming an enemy and a prime target of a group that had committed all kinds of atrocities in her country. But perhaps because she did not fully understand the true meaning of her words, perhaps out of conviction, or most likely a mixture of both, Malala did not stop there. That same year, the local BBC office in Pakistan came up with the idea of creating a blog written anonymously by a student from the Swat Valley who would simply tell her story of life under the rule of the radical Taliban. The idea was simple, but none of the young people in the area were willing to take the risk. And with good reason. The first option presented was a young girl named Aisha, about 16 years old, but fearing possible reprisals, the girl's parents forbade her from doing so. Malala was almost 5 years younger than the previous volunteer, but when the idea was presented to her, she did not hesitate for a moment to accept it. To protect her, the blog was published under the pseudonym Gul Makai. The girl wrote all her posts by hand and then secretly delivered them to a reporter, who published them directly in the newspaper and on the internet. The first entry was posted on January 3rd, 2009, and read as follows: "Yesterday, I had a terrible dream about military helicopters and the Taliban. I have been having these dreams since the start of the military operation in Swat. My mother made me breakfast, and I went to school. I was afraid to go to school. because the Taliban had issued an edict banning all girls from going to school. Only 11 out of 27 students attended class, because the number of students decreased due to the Taliban's edict. My 3 friends moved to Peshawar, Lahore, and Rawalpindi with their families after this edict. The measures to protect Malala's identity worked for a while, but Islamic fundamentalists aren't exactly known for leaving things half done. In 2009, her identity as the author of this blog was leaked, and her face began to gain more and more notoriety as she began to appear in documentaries, interviews, and media. By the age of 15, both she and her family had received numerous recognitions. However, her young age was not a line the Taliban were unwilling to cross. For years she had received numerous death threats, both in messages slipped under the doors of her home and on social media sites like Facebook. Being a child would not stop them. And at a meeting in the summer of 2012, the top radical leaders unanimously agreed to kill her. On October 9, 2012, a group of Taliban killers boarded the bus carrying the teenager from school to her home. They boarded and opened fire, hitting her with bullets, one of which traveled more than 18 inches from the side of her left eye, through her neck, and lodged in her shoulder. Another bullet hit her forehead. 2 other girls on the bus, Kainat Riaz and Shazia Ramzan, were injured in the shooting. But unlike Malala, they were stable enough to give information to journalists when the media arrived. Malala was unconscious and in critical condition. The attack on Malala caused a huge reaction, generating a wave of sympathy for the teenager, and an equally huge wave of anger and outrage against her attackers. The next day, protests were held in many cities across Pakistan, and more than 2 million people signed the Right to Education campaign petition, which led to the ratification of Pakistan's first right to education law. National officials offered a reward of 10 million rupees, about $105,000 for information leading to the arrest of her attackers. World leaders, from Pakistani President Asif Ali Zardari to UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, and then US President Barack Obama, weighed in. On the same day as the attack, she underwent a 5-hour surgery during which, fortunately, the bullet was successfully removed. Although her condition was critical, she eventually stabilized, and on October 15, 2012, she was transferred to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham, United Kingdom, to continue her recovery. In January 2013, Malala was discharged from the hospital and returned to school. Even as the Taliban continued to openly threaten her life, they openly stated that they would attempt to kill her again if they had the opportunity. With so much chaos around her, in her home country, Malala had to start a new life in England. However, none of it stopped her. Not even a bullet could silence her mission. At 17, Malala became the youngest person to win the Nobel Peace Prize. But that was just the beginning. Her fight for education would only grow louder, and this would not be her only major achievement. With simply the strength of her words, thoughts, and above all her example, Malala had become a global symbol. She is a testament to the horizons that a woman can conquer when she is willing to fight for what she believes in. Not only was she the youngest person to win a Nobel Prize, but she is also on the BBC's list of the 100 most influential women in the world, has an asteroid named in her honor, and the audiobook version of her autobiography, I Am Malala, won a Grammy for Best Children's Album. Malala's story is not just one of survival, it's proof that a single voice can shake the world. That courage isn't about being fearless. It's about standing up, even when you're afraid. She didn't just rise after being shot. She soared and carried millions with her. She is not just a name in a headline. She is a force, a symbol, and a blueprint for what bravery truly looks like. If this story lit a fire in you, don't scroll away. Hit like, so the algorithm knows this story matters. Hit subscribe, because we are not done telling the truth. And leave a comment. What does Malala's story mean to you? Every voice helps rewrite history. And the more we speak, the less likely these stories will ever be forgotten again.